guys. Welcome back to my Steps to Sobriety, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stevan. Another fantastic day for an interview. And today I've got Kelly Wallace with me. And I need to give you guys a bit of a trigger warning because Kelly is a woman who is determined to speak out for those people who cannot speak out for themselves yet, or for those people where shame and guilt has been too overpowering and buried their darkest secrets. And we both agree that it's time to speak honestly about these taboos, about these topics that are kept behind a bloody white fence, picket fence, and that are so common out there. And we're talking about childhood abuse. And I'm very honored to have Kelly on board here today on my show. It is not an easy topic to talk about, but it is a topic that we must talk about because it is far too common. It was far too common in the past, and it's still today, as we do this interview. Childhood sexual abuse, physical and emotional abuse is happening all around us, regardless where you are in this world, dear listener and viewer. It doesn't matter. If you were to know what was happening in your neighbor's house, you would be horrified. So therefore, I'm so happy. Kelly, thank you very much for coming onto my show.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me to talk about this topic.
And it's a brutal topic. And how the hell do you start a show like that? So tell me, how was Europe? And it's just, fuck off. And it's just, I even although I must have had, a good 20, 30 guests who have specialized on that topic on my show, it still raises my anger just thinking about it. It is so wrong, yet it is so common. Do you know any figures out there? Do you know what is sort of the figures that you have come across?
Conservatively, 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys is what I'm hearing. And sometimes as high as 1 in 3, just across the board.
And that is clearly a childhood sexual abuse. Do you also include physical and emotional abuse in these figures, or?
Those statistics I don't have information on. My particular area is the childhood sexual abuse statistics, but I'm sure there probably is equally, unfortunately, horrifying.
Exactly. No doubt about that. And it's so crazy. And we are talking here about you being from the United States. I know that I've had guests here from New Zealand who spoke of equal figures. So this is very much an undercurrent, a horrific kind of lifestyle, one has to say, that is out there. And it's nuts. So, okay, I think I've brought my own emotions home here. I parked them to the side. So anger, thank you very much. Move over there. later. Kelly, I mean, you have unfortunately been on the receiving end of childhood sexual abuse. What can you actually remember? Are there still clear memories there, or has your mind actually tried to protect you and tried to shelter you?
The way that trauma works in the brain and the way that the trauma kind of goes with my memory of what happened is there were probably between 10 and 20 different incidents that took place. But in my head, it's come down to one memory, and it plays like a movie in my head. The incidents took place at my paternal grandparents' house on visits when I was a child, when I was visiting my dad. My parents had just gone through a contentious divorce, and my dad was living with my grandparents in the eastern part of Oregon, which is where I was born in Eastern Oregon. I live in Portland now, but they took place in a very small farming community. And so it was very rural and cowboys and very white. And so the episode it's there in my head. It plays like a memory. And I mean, like a movie, sorry. And it, I sometimes tuck it away. I'll bring it out in times like this, in therapy sessions. I've gone down that rabbit hole of the memory, but it's still pretty finite in my brain. We have trauma reshapes the way that we can remember details, so I can remember lots of details.
Which is good and which is bad at the same time. I mean, sometimes there are memories that get so deeply buried. There are case reports out of anesthesia where people had problems with their musculoskeletal, their muscles. They had injection of local anesthetic into trigger points, and suddenly they had no vivid memory whatsoever. And that injection, that trigger point suddenly revealed an avalanche of memories that got released. Equally, maybe hearing about something, hearing a sound, smelling something, suddenly memories can get released and you think, oh my God. And that is the problem. So many things do happen to children, and sometimes we consider them as traumatic. Sometimes for the child, there is a lot of trauma there, whilst for a grown-up who thinks, well, what's that? But with childhood sexual abuse, you can't really say that, can you? So there were these 10, 20 incidents. Did you speak to someone? Were you able to talk to someone?
Yes, I actually, before I spoke to my mom, I saw a childhood sexual awareness video in my second grade classroom right after the last incident took place. And I went into the kitchen. I can remember it was a Saturday morning, and I love Saturday morning cartoons. And I went into the kitchen, and it was a December morning, and I walked in and told my mom what was happening. And thank God I saw that video in my classroom. She believed me, which was I consider myself to be very lucky. The average child has to tell has to tell 7 adults before they're believed. And so she believed me on the first try. And she knew that something was very off about me, but she could not put her finger on why. I had lots of anxiety. I had lots of fears that couldn't be explained. I was talking about wanting to die by the time I was 9. I was 7 years old when I was telling her that. So when I told her that, she immediately called the police and leapt into action. And she had that the belief that, this happened to my child and I'm going to do whatever it takes to protect my child. And so she leapt into action and called the police. Child services were notified. We actually had a case manager because my parents' divorce was so contentious. There was a social worker who was assigned. And it was right before Christmas. So I know that around Christmas time, the police detectives came over to our house. I recounted what happened to them. And my grandfather was charged a couple weeks later and arrested, and which is also very rare. My memory was very strong. I had a really good recall of details because the most recent incident took place just weeks beforehand, which is not often the case with a lot of survivors. So that was kind of what happened.
And of course, it is very unusual what you're telling me there, because as you quite rightly say, those kind of sequence of events are so rare. Normally, it is the additional trauma that a child has to undergo when an adult doesn't believe them. When often those people that were supposed to be trusting or that they can trust say, no, you're making that up or something like that. So I'm so pleased for you that at least that additional trauma did not occur. You say that this was quite a close-knit community. It's quite surprising that the police jumped into action so quickly. Were there warning signs, or was there other predatory activity of your granddad?
There were after he was arrested and people were interviewed. There were two other women that came forward who were friends of my aunt, and my aunt was in her early 20s. So both of these two women were I believe they were in their early 20s when they were interviewed, and they talked about him touching him inappropriately, but they backed down, and nothing ever really came of nothing went further. And this was a time when, this type of crime was handled differently. Their testimony, my grandfather, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but there was a trial and I had to testify, and their testimony was not, their information from the police reports from their interviews was not allowed into the trial. So there were others, and the close-knit community, there was a lot at stake for my grandfather and his family. My grandfather was farming with two other family members. And so there was a business at stake, a family business was at stake. And there were other things that came into play. My dad was a assistant district attorney in the same county where he was charged. So I'm not 100% certain, but I believe that my dad probably had a hand in his with his legal assistance. So there were lots of things kind of going against me. And so everyone battened down the hatches and stood by my grandfather. And this was in the times of, you never heard from the victims, you only heard from the supporters. And so again, very different time.
When was that?
It was December 1984. So it was the mid 80s. And at that time, there were things like the McMartin preschool trial going on, which was false memories were a really big thing. People talked quite a bit about that. It was relatively new in terms of, it wasn't really until the mid 70s that a lot of awareness around child sexual abuse kind of started coming into play. So that's only 10 years.
You're quite right. Quite right.
Yeah, lots of things. It's just totally different environment.
The role of man was very differently handled. I mean, to be a man, you have to lay as many women as possible, drink hard, play hard, and variations of that theme has been permeating any kind of society and still does today. So with that also came, after all, the sexual revolution was only 20 years prior to that. Right. So men and women went out there and copulated like rabbits. And that is something that we maybe don't really want to accept and acknowledge. Yet the moment the pill came onto the scene, women started behaving very, very differently. So there was a very lot of confusion, I guess, about the roles of women and men. And with that, I do not apologize anyone for childhood sexual abuse, but I'm just trying to put things into a perspective. We are judging by 2022 standards when really life in the 70s, 80s was very, very different. Norms are very, very different. And after all, we should not forget the intergenerational trauma. Did you ever figure out if your granddad was actually abused himself?
We, in conversations with my mom, he was raised by he was basically abandoned by his own mom. And he was raised by a bunch of cowboys in the Depression. And so he slept in a bed with grown men. And so that we kind of know about. My dad slept in a bed with his brothers, with my grandfather. So there's all kinds of ick factor, going on. And
that is something that there is this silent generation after the Second World War. It's not for nothing that they're called like that. But I mean, we have no idea nowadays about the traumas that went on in the childhoods of those people. And can you imagine how much that has led to core beliefs that are probably not so conducive to a healthy life of integrity, humility, and the way that we like to think about people. So this is a very murky water that we are stirring up by walking through. So this is dodgy. It's very hard. I can understand the policeman to say, bloody hell, what do we make out of that? It is very, very hard. But here you were, and you gave it a shot. The trial went to nothing, the way I understand it. That is correct, isn't it?
Yes. So my grandfather was charged. There was supposed to be a trial in April, which would have been 5 months after I made the allegations, and it got pushed back to July. And then it got pushed back to December. So by the time that my grandfather went to trial, a full year had gone by. And my recall of events was good, but it still wasn't super great because so much time had elapsed.
Sure.
And I also had my dad was doing things like showing up at my school, trying to talk to me, trying to talk to my teachers, trying to talk to my principal, trying to convince them that, oh, Kelly's just confused. There's a very divorce, her head's not in the right place. But I had early intervention. I had a therapist who saw that my recall of events was so strong. She testified at the trial. And the really also another important thing to consider is that 95% of all charges that are brought, they don't go to trial. So only 5% only go to trial. And then the prosecution rates are around 2.8%. So the deck was just like stacked against me. And and again, my grandfather had hired like a very expensive legal team. He had my dad who was helping him like write questions for the defense. So all kinds of, really shady things were taking place.
Wow. So here you are. How old are you now when the trial comes to 8? Great. So the trial didn't go to anything, but here you were essentially, in their eyes, trying to destroy the family.
Yeah,
Did you become a pariah thereafter?
Oh, well, completely. I mean, the entire family, stopped talking to me. My grandmother, it's alleged, ran around, and my paternal grandmother called me Crazy Kelly. I mean, I don't know for sure if that is true. I've heard that third hand, but yeah, I was painted as, someone who made the story up. My mom was coaching me. I mean, all kinds of things were, thrown around.
Your mom was your ally. Your mom was by your side.
Yeah, my mom was trying to protect me.
Yeah.
And she was made out to be a pariah as well. And so, yeah, just
how was school then? I mean, was that because it was such a small community? Were the children teasing and bullying you about it, or?
Well, thankfully, my mom lived on the western. She had moved us to the western part of the state, about 5 hours away.
Oh,
so
nice.
None of my schoolmates knew
good
any of this stuff. Yeah. But I had troubles in school because I was so quiet, and I had an anxiety disorder, and I had a learning disability that made what I call auditory processing very difficult. So basically taking standardized testing was really hard for me, and I just did not test well at all. So all of those things were just kind of a perfect cocktail to just not doing well in school. And it's only been in the last couple of years that I've really brought all of that into focus and really realized how many barriers I had in school growing up.
You are not the first, you will not be the last one. This is such a common story in children who have been abused. It's so hard for children to make sense out of things. And sometimes the trauma affects the brain in such a way that indeed that is, it's virtually impossible for normal processing to occur. I had recently a guest who was unable to concentrate, and her memory was shocking for much of her childhood year. She was being labeled a retard in the school system, and without the help of a special angel of a teacher, she would have never been the successful woman that she is nowadays. But it was, it was to a degree that this guest told me that she was able to count one day to 18, and then the next day she was struggling to remember from 1 to 14, and simple things like that. You have to, I think she read the same book again and again every year for 7 years because she actually could not memorize anything. And it is such messed up heads that we are dealing with. And it's by no means fault of the little one, but that is what trauma can do. And we often don't see it as such. We don't. Right. You just see an outcome, and we are so ready to label, and we are so ready to put things into little holes. And that is the brutal thing. So here you were struggling at school. Your mom probably struggling financially.
Oh, yes.
Exactly. Single mom, isolated from society. Hell, how did that continue?
After the trial, thankfully I had been plunged into this early intervention therapy. I had individual counseling. I had group counseling with other little girls that were also being molested. And I really credit that to giving me the ability to, get through school. My mom had to take a lot of time off of work, and she actually ended up quitting her job and going back to school to get her master's degree in teaching. She was a teacher by training before my parents were born. Right. So, 3rd, 4th, 5th grades, I think we were living off of like student loan money while my mom was going to school. And so she graduated from college, and then we kind of moved around a bunch, and we finally settled in Salem, which is the capital of Oregon, and that was around 8th grade. And so it was such a awkward time to be, moving around, because you start 8th grade and it's like everyone knows each other, and it's this middle school is like hell on earth. You could not pay, you couldn't pay me enough money to go back to middle school or high school for that matter. But during middle and high school, I was very awkward and very weird. I found I had a few friends, but
Stop. Can you tell me one child that feels normal in middle school?
I know.
So hang on. So that very weird. That applies to virtually everyone. I know. So,
I know.
But you think you're one step more than you.
I know. Exactly. I guess the one kind of interesting thing about me during all that weirdness was that I was reading anything and everything I could get my hands on. I was reading the phone book, I was reading the newspaper, and I was reading the business section of our newspaper, which is just a small town business section. But I was like really interested in businesses that were opening, who was rising in this position, and I was like, I don't know what this means, but I just kind of tucked it away, I guess. And it wasn't until years later that I kind of, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, when I graduated from college and I realized I really wanted to be in business for myself. I didn't ever want to work for anyone ever again. And I think that is why, because I wasn't like a straight A student, but there was that business stuff that I was kind of interested in. And there it was, lurking around like 10 years later.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. Okay. Yeah. So there is nothing wrong with that. It is. Unfortunately, I became poor dad for far too long. Poor dad as in making a lot of money, working my ass off, and only nowadays am I finally financially literate enough to actually say, man, you're an idiot or you are so misguided, shall I say? Misguided, let's call it like that. I working so hard to keep those negative voices quiet, who telling me, oh, you idiot, you failure, look at you. Do you have these negative voices nowadays still? I mean, did you have negative voices when you were a child?
I had them when I was a child. They manifested in strange ways, like just feeling like a complete weirdo, like not being able to identify with anyone. And it wasn't until I got sober that I realized, oh, I'm a weirdo, because all the people in the rooms of AA were weirdos. But it kind of started to make sense to me. But yeah, I think I blanked on your question.
No.
Yeah.
That's fine. I took you from left field, so that's unfair.
It's okay.
But here you were basically a woman or a girl who did a superhuman feat, a superhuman action, and unfortunately didn't go anywhere. So there you were, confused, trying to fit in, not fitting in, calling yourself a weirdo. And sooner or later, you come across alcohol. And can you remember the first time you drank?
Yeah, the first time I drank, I was babysitting, and
maybe a bad time to start.
a pretty bad. That was my thought my thought process was, I'm taking care of two kids. They were not home. They were out playing in the neighborhood, and their parents had a box of Franzia, which is like box wine, in the refrigerator. And I was like, oh, now seems like a good idea to have a glass of wine. I'm not going anywhere. I mean, thankfully I took a couple sips of it, and I was like, I cannot stand the taste of this. I never liked the taste of alcohol. And I poured it down the kitchen sink and washed the glass and got rid of all the evidence. And,
Good.
Ate a bunch of mints. And, but yeah, that was my thought process around alcohol was like, let's take a drink when we were watching children, not good, not normal thinking. But it wasn't really until I got to college, and I went to a very small women's college in the middle of upstate New York, and there was nothing to do except drink or study. Pretty much. The town was 150 people, and those were the choices. And so alcohol like saved me when it was the thing that I was looking for to make me feel normal. And it did its job for a little while. I felt even, and like my anxiety is not here anymore. I can have conversations with people without feeling like a space cadet. And it evened me out. It's exactly what I needed.
It does, exactly. You're so right. It's the same with me. It let me forget the darkness. It made me suddenly relax. I was no longer constantly watching my back. I was not constantly hypervigilant, but I could actually just relax. And that was the most beautiful sensation, I must say. The problem is the next day, you have got still your anxiety disorder. Now you've got a hangover and anxiety. In my book, My Steps to Sobriety, I call it hangxiety. So how did that go? I mean, so you were cool when you were drunk. What about the next day? What happened?
I mean, for the first couple of years, I didn't really have hangovers. And then, but eventually it caught up with me, and I was doing things like stealing money off the bar, going into your purse and taking your cigarettes, just doing things that like, this is not normal Kelly behavior. Like, what am I doing? And just, going out for one drink and then coming back
3 days later.
So, yeah, exactly. Like, who did I talk to? What like, just craziness. Yeah, that cycle. Yeah.
At least this was a time when phones didn't have cameras, and at least much of the evidence you could hide. Nowadays, God, I feel sorry for the youth nowadays, because whatever you do within 2 seconds is on the internet. God, at least we got away with so much.
Totally. So I graduated from college in 4 years. I did not have good grades, but I graduated.
Having said it, no, come on, let's give yourself some credit. Here you were struggling with school, struggling and in your earlier years, yet you went to college and you completed college. Come on, let's give yourself some credit here.
Yeah, I was able to do a lot of good things for myself because, in the research that I've done, the people that are believed have much better outcomes in life. So, I was dealt this really yucky hand, but then I was also dealt a really good hand in terms of survivor statistics, and was able to, graduate from college and do a lot of things that, a lot of survivors or even most normal people couldn't do. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So well done. Yeah. And then when you graduated from college, so what was happening? Was there ever a Mr. Right coming along? Or what was the job situation like then?
Well, when I was in college, I discovered that, well, no, I should back up. When I was 17, I realized that I was bisexual. I realized that I had crushes on girls and guys. I never had boyfriends in high school because I didn't know how to really talk to guys. I was raised by a single mom, and it just, she didn't know really. And so I kind of was like figuring out on my own. I went to college, and it was a very, women's colleges at that time were just hotbeds for like queer life. And so that was, a lot of my identity in college was I was very identified with that queer aspect of life. And I had some like girlfriends. And then when I graduated from college, it just kind of all went away, and I started dating men. And so I had a boyfriend at the end of college, and I treated him like crap. He was back in Oregon. I cheated on him, and just, the summer why did I cheat on him? Because I wasn't interested in him. I was waiting for someone else to come along, I think. Right. And he was buying the beer. He was buying the cigarettes. We had some similar interests, but I just was kind of like waiting for, you're nice, but there's someone better out there. And sure enough, I like broke his heart. And then I had a couple other boyfriends. And then in the last, I want to say 6 months of my drinking, I got sober when I was 23. So the last 6 months of my drinking, I was hanging out with a boyfriend who, we were just drinking on the weekends. I was never like one of those people that was drinking during the week. Usually I was more of a weekend warrior kind of drinker. And, I'd go to the bar and have like a pack, 2 packs of cigarettes, and just that was my life, working and then going to the bar and smoking. And I had this boyfriend. I didn't really have any friends. And my mom was kind of like, what are you doing with your life? And she was she had joined Al-Anon, and she was like taking a step back from me in that detached with love kind of way. And I didn't know I just thought she was being cold. And she just finally came out and said it one day. She was like, I think you have a problem with alcohol. It's on both sides. Both my maternal and my paternal grandparents, my grandfathers were alcoholics. And, it's everywhere in my family tree. And then I went to an AA meeting in the town that I was living in. I was living in a suburb of Portland. And it was a huge meeting. I mean, to me, it was huge. There were like 75, 100 people in this meeting.
Wow.
And, yeah.
A lot of piss heads in Oregon, may I say. I That's good. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So like I made myself share. I was like, I have to share. My heart was like beating out of my chest. And I was like, I got to share. I'm never going to share. So I shared, I'm new. And all these women came up to me after the meeting and gave me their phone numbers and gave me rides to meetings. And I found a sponsor and
oh, cool.
Did all the things that, made coffee at the Friday night meeting, did it all. And
how cool is that? How cool is that? The sheer fact that you allowed yourself to actually go to your first meeting, that is huge, because denial is such a powerful part of being an addict, being an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Me, alcoholic, nothing wrong with me. I just have a social life. See, I don't drink during the week. Come on. See, I'm holding down a job. I went to school. What do you want? I just live a normal life. Bullshit. Mm-hmm. You did so well in believing your mother.
Yeah. Well, I had gone to AA 4 or 5 times before. I tried to get sober, and I wasn't ready. But it was that that time. I was ready. I was ready to dive in and do the work. And it was, I mean, I think probably the best decision I ever made in my life.
Oh, I second that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh,
yeah.
please.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so beautiful to hear that you were actually relatively young when you made that call. Many people have to look at the bottom of so many more barrels or bottles, whatever is your poison, until we finally figure out we are just kidding ourselves. We're just trying to escape our reality. But it's intriguing. It's intriguing for me. The alcohol gave you something. You were still happy to give up the alcohol.
Oh yeah.
How did that work? I mean, you said you were ready to do the work. Did that include dealing with your sexual abuse past? How did that come about?
That's interesting. Well, I had been in therapy in and out of high school, and I had a lot of therapy from that childhood under my belt. And when I got sober, I mean, the very last night that I drank, I planned it. I, decided what I was going to drink, where I was going to go. And I told myself, this is it. This is the last time you're going to drink. And it was January 26, 2001. And when I started working the steps, I mean, of course, my grandfather came up on my fourth and fifth step, and my dad and my stepmom, like all of these people from the past came up on the fourth and fifth step. And so it's been so long, I can't remember, like what my thought process was like, but really looking at the anger and resentment that I had towards them was good. Good to look under that rock and see what was there, see what was going on.
Anger and resentment. Oh, my best friends for many decades.
Yes.
Oh, dear me. I was a very angry man.
Exactly.
How did your anger come out? Who were you when at your worst times?
That's a really good question. The anger was, it was directed internally and it was directed externally. Internally, the way that it showed up was, you're not good enough. What are you doing? Why'd you make that decision? Externally, it was, road rage, getting cut off of traffic. I mean, it's still there, but
yes.
I can at least identify it now. But yeah, getting mad at my mom. I mean, just getting or mad at my sister, or just having a target, and that's the way.
How does it come that my words come out of your mouth? That is bizarre. That's true. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, no, we are people who have been full of trauma.
Yeah.
And we have not done all the work, because trauma comes in layers and healing comes in layers. And so I think you have done shitloads of healing in your lifetime, but there is still work to be done. No two ways around that. And you and me, we better don't meet each other in traffic, because I'm probably... You're waiting half a second here, you lazy...
I know.
Why did you not put your indicator on? You wasted 2 seconds of my life.
I Why are you driving on the right side of the road? No, you should be on the left side of the road.
Exactly. And it just shows, look, we are broken people. We are damaged people. But then again, there is the Japanese principle of kintsugi, where you basically have these beautiful pictures of porcelain that is broken and that has been re-glued with golden glue. And whilst that cup or that plate might no longer be as functional, it might be a bit leaky somewhere here or there, it is still the most beautiful thing, and maybe even more beautiful. And I think that is for many of us the case. I like to believe so. I like to believe that the person that I am now, full of the trauma does no longer define me, but the trauma certainly made me who I am nowadays. And for that, I'm proud. Yeah. For that, I'm proud. Leaky and with scars on the outside, scars on the inside.
Definitely.
I like that. And you came to the same conclusion, because here you are nowadays. I mean, we were basically at this young woman at 23 who sort of started to get her shit together and stop drinking, at least. You were talking about step 4 and 5. Now, for those of you who don't know the AA 12-step system, it is basically to do a brutal inventory of your life, where you basically go through and you make heaps of lists of anger, of resentment, who pissed you off. And you are very specific. You write that down. This person pissed me off then because they did that, and that's how it made me feel. And it's you go really into depth. I mean, it can take you months to actually do that. And it's really, really good. Now, the problem is that sooner or later, someone, your mentor or your sponsor, might actually take one of these lists and add another column to it and say, okay, so you're pissed off at this person who did that, who made you feel like that. What was your contribution to that whole scenario? And suddenly, things become interesting, because you are challenged and you are reliving and rethinking and re-experiencing things, and maybe look at them in a different light. And that is beautiful. That is where the growth happens. And that's exactly what you did. And that's not something you do in one afternoon, get it over and done with. That is something that takes weeks, months, and probably years. It still takes years. Actually, my lifetime. I don't think I will be finished with that job, because a lot of shit has happened in my life, and guess what? It continues to happen. So I don't think your life is much better than mine. So any one of you out there who's going for shit, I feel you. Both Kelly and me, we're just sort of saying, when will it stop? So you guys you're not alone. But you have taken action. So both of you, both as in the viewers and listeners, you have taken action by actually listening to the show. Now, congratulations. You took action. You are no longer a victim. You actually are a survivor by actually listening to this. And then maybe we are planting more seeds, how more action you can take. Because now, coming back to you, Kelly, you are still that woman who is beginning to heal. But this is a very different woman than the woman that you are today. What happened in between? Where does your resolve come from? Your drive to make this world a better place?
Well, I think it kind of goes back to what I touched on earlier about, the business, never wanting to ever have to work for someone ever again. I got sober. I got my own apartment. I started doing these like baby steps in my life, and I got some temp jobs, and I got a permanent job. The permanent job was stupid and boring. So I started going to the library and, checking out books about how to sell a manuscript. And so I started working on a manuscript in my free time. And I just kind of did all these little things, there's just, there's something about the way that I'm a very like type A, kind of high strung. I have to be doing something all the time, which is, it's good, but I've also realized that is a side effect of trauma, is that doing all the time. So
you're a workaholic like me.
Yeah.
Because when we're working, we don't have to think, we don't have to feel. You can just keep going. Keep going. Just the more you clean or the more whatever you do, it will go away.
So I wrote a manuscript in my free time. I started a networking group. I found an agent who was just starting out, was very green. And she read my book proposal and she was like, your book proposal is great. Let me see your manuscript. She read my manuscript. She's like, you need an editor. And I was like, I can't afford an editor. So I pushed that project off to the wayside for about, actually, I never came back to it. I stopped writing for 5 years. And in the meantime, I had found a job that I enjoyed, helping people with disabilities find work. And I worked for someone who basically taught me everything I needed to know to get my own contract with the state of Oregon. And so I worked for her for a year and a half. And then I went off and got my own contract a couple of years later. And so I've been doing this kind of work for, 17 years now. And, it affords me the ability to own my own house and live a fantastic life. And so I'll probably keep doing it for the rest of my life. And so in the meantime, I eventually, I had a friend, and he was someone that I had met in AA, and he had kind of peeled off from AA. He decided it wasn't for him, but he had joined a writer's group, and he was like, your story, you need to write your story, whether you fictionalize it or you write a memoir, you should do that. And so around 2010, I joined a writer's group where I started writing. I brought my pages to my workshop group and read them aloud, and I got feedback on those pages. And I did that for 10 years and shaped a manuscript. I have another manuscript that came out of this one manuscript. So I've got two. So because I was constantly writing and generating new material, I have so much material. So
which is beautiful. And of course, once you start writing things down, you actually give words to feelings. And you might write something in a certain way that you think, wow, I didn't realize that. And that has happened to me many a times over. You write something. One day I had a writer's block. One day I just sat down and do this crazy writing. Writer's block, didn't know what to write. And you just start writing some bullshit, whatever. You just type, force yourself to type. And suddenly I had this out-of-body experience because my fingers kept typing. My eyes just watched the words come onto paper. And I thought, what the hell am I writing here? And my subconscious came out with stuff where I thought, fuck, sorry, I've got goosebumps here. It was this kind of really strange sensation where, okay, there is so much healing still to be done. And it came out on paper, and you had that experience. You started writing these kind of things. Did that make it easier for you then to talk about it down the line?
Well, the thing about being interviewed by police detectives, talking about it in therapy, talking about my story to complete strangers. I've been telling my story to complete strangers for my entire life. So I can pretty much tell anyone, hey, this is what happened to me. And I'm fairly comfortable with that. But the one thing that changed for me when I went to my writing group and I started reading my pages aloud was the feedback that I got was, wow, that is so fucked up, just on a collective level, hearing from a group of 7 or 8 people in my group. And they asked questions and they said, how did it affect you in this way? How did it make you feel in this situation? So lots of things were going on. One, I was getting that validation that what happened to me was really messed up. And I had been hearing that my entire life, but something just changed. Something clicked when I was going to my writing group and talking about this. And then the other thing that changed was I had a teacher that was really, she made us write like a 10-minute, something that would have happened in 10 minutes. We had to come with like 10 pages. So the level of detail, the level of feelings, what did so-and-so smell like? What did they look like? What were their, hand motions? What were they doing? How did they do this? So I got to start thinking, not only about myself, but also about the interior lives of my grandfather, my dad, my mom. Like, what were their motivations? Why were they doing this? So lots of things kind of started happening for me when I really got in there. And it was like an 11th step, which is, it's like our meditation step where we basically get in there and get quiet and, listen for the quiet. What happens when you stop and listen to the quiet?
You suddenly feel something growing inside of you that is, I don't know, in my case, it was a quiet, should I do that kind of a thing. My wife said one day, many moons ago, maybe you should write a book. And I looked at her, you have lost your marbles, girl. And then that seed was planted, and then I couldn't step back. The seed was in the soil, and maybe I should tell about the dark side that I have gone through, the dark times, and how I survived and how I got out. And that became tentatively, well, let's try, and I couldn't stop. Was that the same with you? Did you?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think the thing with me was I felt like that same teacher also said, you have to write at least for an hour every single day, minimum an hour.
Yeah.
And so I wrote every day for the first like 3 years. And because I also had a fear that if I stop writing, the story is never going to get told. So I was driven a little bit by fear that I would just stop writing. And so it wasn't until I went to this writing conference in 2013 that that first memory of like, I gave myself a week off from writing, and all these people would come to a writing conference to write. And I was like, this is my week off because I need a break. So.
Okay. So where did then the conviction come to actually speak out? You are nowadays a woman who wants to raise awareness. When did that occur?
That I kind of started in COVID. I started working with a public speaking coach because I was like, I want to get my story out there more. And I had it in the back of my mind that I wanted to do podcasts. And she was like, great. And so she helped me, find the microphone. I kind of started, kind of like I'm very self-taught. I kind of just started going out there and looking at podcasts and listening to podcasts and finding ones that were going to be a good match for me. And I just reached out like crazy, and I, planted the seed. And now I just, it's something that I really love sharing my story. like I said, I can tell anyone my story because I've been telling it for so long. And I love the podcast freedom, the ability to just talk and talk.
I think your story is beautiful because it gives so much hope. It gives so much hope from a young girl who had so many hurdles to yet a businesswoman who is out there and is basically, I mean, you're step 12 now. You're giving back to the community. You're giving back to, you're helping others. And that is the most beautiful step in my experience, to now share our stories and therefore empower others to maybe seek the help that they deserve, maybe deal with the trauma that they have been hiding for so long, maybe stop using the behaviors or the drugs that we're helping them to escape reality. It does not matter if this is alcohol or prescription drugs or gambling or sex addiction, pornography. It does not matter. We all are hiding often enough from something, and some of us have become professional hiders, and I was certainly guilty for that. And so let's stop the hiding. Let's actually switch on the light in those dark closets and dust off those skeletons. Have a look into the eyes of these skeletons and see if they still deserve to be in there, or if they nowadays should not be buried once and for all. Or if you're a supernatural, then put some soul on it and burn the skeletons. That's cool with me. James Dean. No, sorry, Dean and what was the other guy? Sorry, I'm a Supernatural fan, but now I'm forgetting my heroes, for crying out loud. But you know what I mean. Maybe it's time to look at your trauma and look at your at what has been happening in your past, and maybe it is time to work on it. Maybe you were not ready before. Maybe right now might be a good time.
Definitely. Take it out of the closet and take a look at it.
Hey, is there a message that you would send back to the younger you, maybe to the girl when she was 8 years old? What would you tell that girl nowadays?
Oh, wow. I think I would probably try and have compassion for that little Kelly that did a lot of hard things at a very young age. And just, you know, the one thing that, you know, I carried for so long was, I thought because my grandfather was not guilty, it was my fault. And I think that, you know, I actually, there's a closet back here and there's a sign on the door that says it's not your fault. And one of my spiritual teachers made me print that sign out and hang it up. So I think, you know, I would tell little Kelly, it's not your fault.
That's powerful. And what message would you send back the 15-year-old weirdo?
Keep being weird because it's going to pay off in spades.
I agree. Normal people scare me. Yes, you are so right. Live authentically, whoever that is. If you love Supernatural, get the posters. Come on, get the t-shirt, for crying out loud. Okay, so absolutely right. That's what I do in my photography. I'm rather a darker kind of photographer, and wait until it's Halloween. Hello, bring it on. So let's be weird. Let's be crazy. Let your crazy light shine.
Exactly.
Because then you start owning yourself. You are no longer hiding. And if you let that little bit of craziness out, maybe it's also a start of letting other things out.
Yeah.
Maybe it's also a way of you maybe addressing some of the not so funny things in your life. So I'm all for it. I love that message.
Me too.
Oh, Kelly, you're an amazing woman. You are, wow. You have gone through hell and back, and you keep reinventing yourself, B, getting stronger. And it is by you coming out there and being this inspirational speaker that you are, by actually raising awareness for childhood sexual abuse, you are making this world a better place. And for that, I thank you. And for that, it was an honor that I had you on my show. So I'm very, very, very grateful that you came today.
Yeah.
Now, if people want to know more about you, where can they find you?
I have a website, Kelly, KELLYWALLACE, kellywallace.org. I'm on Instagram at Kelly the Writer. I think it's Kelly the Writer. Yeah. And on Twitter, Kelly the Writer #1, just the number
Perfect.
1.
Check it out down there, guys. I've got her social media detail in the show notes. So that's absolutely fine. I can never remember mine either. So that's why we've got the show notes for the YouTube video as well as for the podcast. And whilst you're down there, you might as well press the like and the subscribe button so that you get more info about the cool guests that I bring onto my show. People like Kelly who are coming out of their closet, so to speak, who are saying it's not my fault, and who are speaking out, and with that breaking taboos, and therefore encouraging healthy discussions about not so healthy subjects, but we need to talk about them. They have been in hiding for far too long, and people got away with doing nasty things. No, the moment we speak about that, maybe we can just start around the dinner table a discussion that might save a life down the line. And that is power. That's true power. And that is power that you all have, guys, out there. So, check Kelly's story out. Kelly, your books, when will they be released? Or are they out already?
They are not out. I am working with an editor, and this is it. A paid editor. I'm making final corrections right now as we speak. And so this fall,
is that no all forever?
I know. But I'm actually planning on going out on agent submission in the fall. So
good on you. Good on you.
Yes.
And meanwhile, you could do far worse than actually, if you want to do something, so read something. Check this one out here, My Steps to Sobriety, my book, which is out there on Amazon as an electronic copy and hard copy. And basically what I've written is my story, but I've given you the 12 steps of getting clean, getting sober, but not in a religious way, but rather as in a failed business way. So as much as you would help someone in a business and try to look at what's going on and help them look at the things that don't work so well, throw them out, those things that maybe he could do better, well, you help him, and so on. That is normal. That's how you would help a friend. And yet it is exactly the same what you can do maybe to yourself. And that more importantly, the life is throwing us challenges left and right. So the last third of the book is all about the challenges that you are facing in daily life. How do you deal with toxic relationships? How do you deal with a bout of depression? How do you recognize it? All those kind of things. So go out there, check it out. By the time you've read that, Kelly's books are out, and then you can go straight from one to the other and take it from there. Kelly, you're an amazing woman. Thank you so much for coming onto my show. I truly, truly appreciate your passion, your time, your effort, your honesty. It is so refreshing in nowadays world.
Thank you. glad I could share
absolute
my story.
Pleasure. And you guys out there, look after yourself and live with passion. Bye. Done.
All right.
Oh, we were just getting a bit laggy now towards the end. I'm so pleased.
Good.
You did so well. Man, Kelly, you're an amazing woman.
Yeah.
You did so well. I know I threw some hard questions at you, but they just sort of came and they developed, and it was so beautiful how you answered them. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So what will happen now is I'll do the post-production and all that, and you probably go live towards the end of August. We are now at end of July. End of August, maybe the first week of September. That's roughly about the ballpark. As soon as we have stopped, an automatic email will go out to you where I invite you for a follow-up interview. And that follow-up interview is called 10 Points in 10 Minutes. Okay. And the remit is different. So right now, this was very free-flowing back and forth. 10 Points in 10 Minutes is for those people who don't want to spend an hour listening to a podcast, but rather want to have all the points there, 10 minutes. And the way we record it is different, that we actually record in speaker view. So check it out on my YouTube show. There's a channel, 10 Points in 10 Minutes. But it's basically one sentence introduction. Today I've got Kelly Wallace with 10 points in 10 minutes. And then I pull out my microphone. And now you have got the floor for 10 minutes. Okay. And if the remit is that you basically meet someone in an airport lounge and you truly think that this person deserves to hear all those things you have to say. But both of your planes are leaving in 10 minutes and you will never, ever see each other again. So what would you tell that person in 10 minutes? And it's basically, it's sort of in between the interview and a TED Talk. TED Talk is one story weaved through. Here you have got 10 points in 10 minutes. It's sort of in between. It's a big challenge because you probably can talk for hours. I can talk for hours. And I was struggling when I was doing that the first time for myself. So it's a cool thing. So I plant the seed. If you want to, be my guest. And what I do is I make that available. So you get that, you download it, put it on your website, do whatever you want. Okay. So this is a free promotional basically for you.
Awesome.
But it's good fun. And it's hopefully something where people who don't have the time, they might just actually invest the time in 10 minutes rather than into the hour. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. I'll look forward to that. Oh, absolutely. And one more thing. If you want me to be part of your production, how do you call it? There's a nice word for it. Your team, production team, publication team, i.e., if you want to tell me, first of all, send me a draft of your thing, of your book, and then tell me the date that it is coming out. So what I do is basically on the first day or first week, I buy a copy that makes me a verified purchase, but I've read it already. And so I can immediately give you a 5-star review. So this way you get reviews because that's really what sells. Yeah, totally. Okay. So I'm quite happy to do that for my fellow authors, co-authors. Of course. And if you could do the same for me, get a copy of my book. I will do the same for you. Click through it and then write a review. I would be very, very grateful for that. Okay. Cool. Will do. Kelly, you're an amazing woman. I'll let you go. So thank you so much for your time. You're welcome. Thank you. Bye. Bye.